Hey there, how you doing? So, I guess last time I was on, we talked a bit about some of the metaphysical things that exist in the world and exist throughout history, permeating through the Freemasonic videos, Back to the Future movies, right? Some people had a hard time viewing that, which I actually felt quite bad for. I sent it to some people through Messenger, and they couldn't. The version of YouTube that Messenger gives you is an old school version, and it doesn't give you like the fucking button links at the end of the video. So everyone was wondering where the videos were. So I redirected to the playlist to some people, but you just need to go look for the playlist called Back to the Future, like Freemasonry symbolism. I think it's called something like that. And then they'll have all those videos in there for you, plus a couple extras that go beyond the Back to the Future that are made by the same production company that I included in the playlist. It's all some pretty interesting stuff. And one thing I wanted to talk about that I forgot about on that was I started talking about the ages and how, we're in Pisces and moving into Aquarius, and that lines up with, astral theology as well as true astrology, or scientific astrology, where we are getting Aquarius rising in the north right now for the first time, in 12 times, a little over 2,000, something like 30,000 years or something like that, I think, roughly speaking. It's been a while since I've looked at that information directly, but nonetheless, one thing I want to talk about that too is that we also have the Earth that has to do with that. So, we had the Stone Age, and we catalog that by our use of tools made of stone, and then we move into Bronze Age, which was the first metals to be used. Bronze can be turned into bronze is brass and tin, I believe, put together to make bronze, and so that was some of your first stronger metals that was winning the day. And then we went into an Iron Age, which of course can be turned into steel as well. And now we're kind of coming out of that Iron Age, and all of that sort of steel element and all the things that have to do with that element are disappearing. Oil's being phased out. All the big heavy steel that's used to move and transport that will be phased out maybe as well. And in line with the sort of occult or sort of metaphysical or spiritual teachings, now we're supposed to be going into a Silver Age, if I remember correctly. I don't think that, Bronze, Silver Age next. So it's actually kind of true. I've talked a couple times about my investment in silver, and I look at that as, partially as an investment, partially as sort of hedging myself away from inflation that we're sort of going to be under right now. Money's going to go down in purchasing value if that stuff the silver goes up, and then I can trade it in for money to go buy stuff, and I'll have maintained my wealth by not allowing it to just be affected on the dollar, because I didn't keep it in the form of a dollar. But also that our Silver Age is going to have to do with silver being used in technology quite a bit. I mean, if we do end up going through this solar panel revolution, silver is required to make that stuff. Silver is required to make your cell phone and a lot of other technology as well. So if we turn into this tech world, techopoly, then there will be a huge need for silver. So we're sort of, there's signs of us coming into that age as well, which is kind of interesting. Anyhow, I thought too about how after doing this for, since roughly the end of summer now till now, there's a lot of things that I've been happy with about doing this, and there's some things that I haven't been. There have been some regrets with some of the things that I've done and sort of experimented with on this channel, and that's fine. I don't regret the regrets. I try to remember them and move on. And one of the things that I was told when I was sort of brainstorming this was that you're going to have to find a way to put a positive spin on everything, and that's going to be the hard part. And it certainly is the hard part. How do you put a positive spin on a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, because it's all coming from a position of negativity. People on here, including myself, are all YouTubing it up, trying to find answers. So you're here to try to find answers, and I am too, and I think I have a couple, and I'm trying to guide people in the right way. So I try to be really careful with the things I say and what's really good. I mean, if I know something is good, and it's something that everybody can agree on, then that's based, that's for real, and that's kind of where I think we have to go. And I think that's where I want to start guiding the channel too. Putting that positive spin is probably going to have to be done in a way where we don't dwell on all the things of the past so much, which is kind of what we're doing, really. Even today, a lot of the methods of trying to run a society that we're using are sort of part of that last age, you know, the sort of Roman, Greco-Roman, Western Empire stuff that we're doing, we've been doing for 2,000 or more years now, and really it's just sort of been a constant struggle against ourselves. And so is there a way to get around that? And I mean, if we all had a spiritual awakening, we could get around that. You know, there is a lot of waste that goes on, and so I criticize the Great Reset the most for the fact that all of the people involved with that relied on our consumerism, relied on our debt, relied on our wastefulness. They relied on our disposable society where you just throw things away. And it was one of the things we said when we noticed that relationships weren't sticking anymore when I was around 20 years old, maybe a little bit earlier than that, say 98 to 2000, somewhere in there, that even relationships had become a disposable commodity. So we're falling apart at the fucking seams here. And it's our fault. We've had our spirituality wrestled from us through media, controlled by certain people that I believe have an agenda that wanted to destroy our society so that they could recreate it the way they want it. So it's like, although those Back to the Future videos I posted, because they have a really nice spin on occult stuff, I mean, there is something to be said about what's negative about some of the things that they try to pull with us and manipulate us into too, right? So, but how do we get around all that? I mean, if we weren't as wasteful ourselves and took it upon ourselves to say, well, we know this is wrong, most of us do, and actually do something about it, we might not have had to head down this path. And I don't criticize people for the choices they make too much. I mean, not to the point where I should say, you absolutely don't do that or you'll be under some kind of threat. You know, like, for example, being in Alberta, there's a lot of guys who drive trucks around, and ladies too. But they don't do anything other than drive it back and forth to work, and they barely actually use the box in the back of the thing. And it is wasteful. I mean, I drive a car because I've kind of just been a townie, and I drive to welding shops, and if I ever worked out in the field, we had a company truck to use, right? So to me, that made sense. But otherwise, I've been a Civic driver for most of my vehicles, and I love them. They got pretty good pep for what they are, and they last, and they're good on gas. I mean, how can you go wrong, you know? I mean, you could spend all kinds of money on just carting your ass around, and by the end of it, it was just a car. Everything's always great when it's new, but pretty soon it loses that appeal anyway, and you kind of want to move on and away from it, or it gets a bump or a scratch, and suddenly you don't care about it, or you hate it even now. It used to bring you joy, and now it brings you pain, you know. But yeah, so I mean, that's going to be, I think, the point of the show now. I had to evolve it. I mean, I had my initial video where I talked about a lot of things I wanted to do, and some of them we just couldn't do because of COVID. How do I go talk to old stock Canadians at a time like this, you know? At least not to have a good up-close personal. Maybe you could do it over the phone or a Zoom or something, but good luck with that. So, you know, whatever. But yeah, so I mean, I'm trying for the 2021 to make things have that positive spin on it. You know, like everybody has to come to a realization that democracy, when they say, oh, so-and-so isn't going to unify the country, how do they have a hope? And so-and-so ruined the unification. Well, there never was a unification, okay? Democracy is a fight. It is a fight. You have an official opposition, you have people in Senate, you have people in cabinet, you have people in the House, and their goals is to oppose each other, and it has a point so that they can oppose until hopefully you find the nice shiny answer between all of the opposition and eliminating bad ideas and hopefully just going for the best one. But you can't have unity in a country that is ultimately built on the fundamentals of division and trying to find the answer through that. I think there's certain answers that are already out there that exist that we don't have to go through all of that nonsense. And you know, if we take more responsibility on ourselves to learn and behave in a manner that's more anarchistic, because we are all powerful, we don't need a government really, if we could find and realize the power that we all have in ourselves, from our own goodness, from our own fairness, from our own motivation and ability to get up and make the changes that we want. You know, so it's ultimately is our responsibility. Just like the Great Reset has been thrust upon us, we could have stopped it if we would have perhaps behaved differently. Then again, you could perfectly well argue that that's not possible, that this is all just a control scheme, and I'd be on board with you on that anyway as well, actually. Nonetheless, I think that, you know, there's still changes that we can all afford to make that will sort of help this all along. So, Yeah, so anyway, that's my for 2021 video, and I've got a couple clips that I found today or whatever that hit my mind from stuff in the comments that I'm going to put out today too. Some Sunday vidges. We'll see how it goes throughout the week too. I think that's about all I wanted to say. I get scatterbrained, like I forget stuff. I always have to bring it back up again. But that's pretty good for now anyhow, and get a couple of those fun clips up talking about quantum physics and how quantum physics has actually brought scientists to a more spiritual place than they used to be, if that's their field, where they keep on trying to find the answer to the lowest common denominator, and they come to a place where they don't really have an answer anymore. Entanglement theory, where everything, if it came from a big bang or a single creation, either way you look at it, whether you want to look at it as a spiritual or a scientific thing, which are, I mean, you know, I think those are relatively transferable for the world that we live in, where we do come to a point where we can't explain things anymore. It just falls apart. The math disappears. You can't reduce it anymore, and so now you're left with some sort of creator that managed to sort of do all this intelligent design. Intelligent design has got to be real. If you had to rely on evolution, but it was random, then it might give you the wrong evolutionary piece, but that's not the way it works. Things evolve accordingly and intelligently. Things were created intelligently. Little birds can land on the small branches of trees that host the berries that they eat, but the big birds can't. You know, there's a lot of things that just fit. So anyway, yeah, that's some of the stuff that I think will maybe start guiding and going towards. Because I mean, like I say, we've been doing the same fighting that we've been doing, trying to make a good society for so long now that you got to maybe just quit pissing around with that fight, because it doesn't actually fix anything. It doesn't bring any unity, and that's ultimately what we want. We want to try to find the common ground with everyone so that we don't have all of this fractured tribalization that's really got us in a pickle now, where people are identifying themselves as what they are and not who they are, and you know, that leads to millions of deaths usually. So so I mean, I've always, this whole point of this channel is to try to help, and so maybe that's the best way I can try to help now, is to bring a more spiritual perspective to everyone on everything. So anyhow, this video is getting a little bit on the long side. I was open for 10 minutes, but we'll cut it there, and then we'll get a couple of other fun things put out today. All right, peace out, stay tuned.